The trouble didn't start the way you might think. No, it wasn't about weeds on the lawn or a noisy dog. It started with a woman who decided my very existence was a problem. Her name was Carol Whitman, the self-appointed queen of our neighborhood association. And from the first day I moved in, she looked at me like I was some kind of stain she couldn't scrub out. Which was ironic because I kept my place sharp, grass trimmed, driveway spotless, flags folded tight enough to slice your finger if you touched them. But Carol didn't care about any of that. What really got under her skin was my garage, or more specifically, what I kept inside it. I'm an army man, spent years in command, and when you've lived that life, discipline and preparation become second nature. My garage was more than storage. It was my sanctuary, filled with gear and keepsakes that reminded me of who I was and what I'd been through. To Carol, though, it was some kind of threat. At first, she played the polite card, letters with flowery language about community standards and aesthetic harmony. I brushed it off. Petty HOA stuff, right? But then the fines started coming. Random citations for things that didn't exist, warnings about unapproved storage, even though my garage was closed tight. And every one of those notes carried the same undertone. We can make your life miserable if you don't fall in line. I documented everything, took photos, logged dates, filed reports, but the harassment didn't stop. One morning I walked out to find my car windshield smashed, 2 tires slashed, and a scrap of paper under the wiper with 4 ugly words. Next time we take more. That wasn't HOA business anymore. That was a threat. I handed the sheriff every piece of evidence I had, and he looked me dead in the eye and said, "People like this, they escalate if you don't shut them down. Keep your cameras on." So I did. I upgraded every angle, installed motion lights, cloud backups, signs warning about surveillance. My daughter teased me for going overboard, but she understood. And yet, the vibe in the neighborhood changed. People looked at me differently, like I'd been marked. Some neighbors gave me small nods of sympathy. Others just kept their heads down. One old man muttered, "Carol's got pull, better watch yourself." It was the kind of fear that seeps into a community and makes good people pretend they don't see what's happening. That's when I called Marcus, an old friend from my unit, the kind of guy who sleeps lighter than most people breathe. He came not because I expected a firefight, but because sometimes you just need another set of steady eyes. We walked the property together, adjusted cameras, checked blind spots, and even added a hidden feed aimed square at the garage. We joked about living in a spy thriller, but beneath that humor was the quiet understanding that something ugly was building. I thought those cameras and that level head would be enough. But I was wrong. It happened one evening. Marcus and I were in the kitchen, talking over the placement of the new sensors, when a dull metallic thunk echoed from the garage. I froze, heart thudding in my chest, and pulled up the back feed on the monitor. There they were, 4 men, reflective vests flashing, shadows slipping into position at my garage door. Not kids messing around. These guys moved with purpose like they'd rehearsed it. Without hesitation, I went upstairs, opened the small safe, and pulled out 2 old service pistols. My hands moved out of habit, checking them with the calm precision of muscle memory. I tucked one at my back, out of sight, and walked toward the garage. Marcus saw me, gave a single nod. No words needed. We'd been here before, in another life. The sound of metal grinding against steel grew louder. The screech of a crowbar tearing into my door. Muffled voices carried through the walls. "Check the racks. Commander keeps unregistered weapons in here. HOA wants them confiscated. HOA wants my guns?" That's when my jaw locked. Carol Whitman had gone from paper fines to staging a full-on raid. We stepped into the doorway. "Afternoon, gentlemen," I said, keeping my tone calm, pistol hidden at my back. 4 heads snapped toward me, their dollar store badges swinging on lanyards. The words, HOA enforcement, stenciled on their vests like some bad parody of authority. The tallest one stepped forward, puffing up his chest and jabbing his clipboard at me like it was a weapon. "Sir, this is official business. We've had complaints about hazardous materials. You need to comply." I tilted my head. "Hazardous materials? You broke into my garage. That's a felony." Marcus let out a sharp laugh. "Authorized by who, Carol? You clowns don't have jurisdiction over a doghouse, let alone his property." That stung. One of the smaller guys shifted nervously, eyes darting toward the SUV idling at the curb. They weren't expecting resistance, definitely not from someone with combat in his bones. I stepped closer, voice low but cutting. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stand still. You're going to explain exactly why you thought breaking into my home was a good idea. And if any of you twitches, I'll take that as self-defense. That's when the smallest one snapped, lunged forward with a pair of cheap handcuffs like he thought he was about to make a citizen's arrest. Bad move. Training kicked in. I sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, twisted, and shoved him face first into the concrete. He howled, cuffs clattering across the floor. Marcus moved just as fast, slamming another into the workbench hard enough to rattle the pegboard. The other two tried to charge us head on, but it was sloppy, desperate. I dropped one with a forearm to the jaw and a sweep of his leg. Marcus folded the other with a shoulder throw and an elbow to the ribs. In seconds, the four of them were on the ground, wheezing, their swagger gone. I pressed the barrel of my pistol into the concrete beside the man I dropped, close enough for the sound to ring in his ears. Listen carefully. Impersonating law enforcement is a federal crime. Breaking and entering, state felony. Add assault, and you'll all go to prison. The leaders stammered. We were just following orders. Carol said you were a threat. There it was. The rotten root finally exposed. Marcus called it in. When the deputies arrived, my cameras had already captured everything, from the moment they pried the door to the second we put them on the floor. The cops didn't waste time. They cuffed all four, rattled off charges of impersonation, burglary, attempted theft, and because one had swung a crowbar, armed criminal trespass. But the Real bomb dropped in interrogation. One of them cracked first, admitted they'd slashed my tires, smashed my windshield. Carol told us to. Another chimed in. Yeah, she said it'd scare him off. When investigators dug into their phones, it all spilled out. Messages, instructions, every step traced back to her. The neighborhood flipped overnight. People who had kept their heads down suddenly confessed they'd been bullied too. Fined for garden ornaments, threatened with liens, fences ordered torn down. My case was just the ugliest one, but not the only one. I filed a civil suit, property damage, harassment, punitive damages. My lawyer aimed high, 125 grand plus fees. The HOA's insurer settled for $100,000 and cover my costs. Carol herself had to pay $15,000 out of her own pocket. And in criminal court, she pleaded guilty to harassment and conspiracy. She lost her position, got barred from ever touching an HOA in the county again, and walked away with a hefty fine and a ruined reputation. When it was over, I stood in that same garage with Marcus, looking at the shelves and racks that nearly got stolen. The air felt heavier somehow, quieter, but safer. Neighbors started stopping by, shaking my hand, thanking me for standing up. The HOA got stripped of its teeth and rebuilt with actual oversight. For once, the bullies got knocked back. But here's the thing, as satisfying as it was to see justice play out, I can't shake one thought. What happens in neighborhoods where people don't fight back? Where someone like Carol gets to keep pushing unchecked because folks are too scared or too tired to stand up. That's the part that lingers with me. So now I'll throw it over to you. Was I right to fight fire with fire, or should I have handled it differently? Do HOAs have too much power, or are they necessary evils to keep order? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your own HOA horror stories, and let's talk about where the line really is between community rules and outright abuse of power. And hey, if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep those notifications on, because trust me, this ride isn't over.